Hello again and welcome to another video. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you're all well. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button out there, and I hope you enjoy this video. A big shout out to my regular viewers and subscribers, and we'll get on with the video today. So in front of me here I've got a book that I've had since my youth. About 1993 I had this book since. Obviously the cover is self-explanatory, the Deltics. And although I'm a steam man, I do have a deep affection for vintage diesel traction, and these are no exception. The Deltic machines, I've always liked these because they just look really powerful, and they are very, very nice, handsome looking diesel locos. Unfortunately, I was not around when these left service in 1981, and I do remember seeing one going past on the eastern region between Chadwell Heath and Romford one Sunday when I was out on a track patrol, and I remember seeing one go past light engine, and that was quite nice. And the great thing about these particular diesel locos is they've got twin Napier engines inside. And the Napier engines, here's a boring fact, the Napier engines were developed originally in the Royal Navy big ships like the destroyers and the big ships the Royal Navy have. They had Napier engines in the engine rooms, and that's where they got the design technology for the engines that go in the Deltic machines. Hence their really powerful sound and their really powerful output. When these first came out in 1961 on the East Coast Main Line, the Deltics at the time were the most powerful diesel locomotive in the country. I should say, rephrase that actually, diesel electric locomotive, because that's exactly what a diesel is technically. It's a diesel electric locomotive. And people might say, well, there's no overhead wires, there's no juice rail on the floor, why is it electric? Well, the fact is there's a generator. It's a generator on wheels is what a diesel locomotive is, and it generates electricity from a diesel generator that converts it into electricity that supplies current for the traction motors, that when the driver opens the regulator, it opens the throttle in the generator, and it creates electricity, generates electricity, puts more amps into the motor, turns the wheels, train moves. So it's a diesel electric, and it's a generator on wheels basically. That's the easiest way to think of it. Even though you see loads of diesel clag coming out the top of it from the exhaust, that's just the exhaust and the generator. But the actual motors are driven by electricity, generated, as I mentioned, by having the diesel generator. Anyway, enough of that boring geeky fact. Why have I got this book in front of me today? Well, I'll just show you two images that I've always been fascinated by in this book ever since I've had it. The first one is that there's an example here in this book of a Deltic loco, and this one's in very pristine condition. Two things you'll notice about this: obviously it's in shiny condition, it's in preservation, it's the last final months of weeks of service on the main line before they all went scrapped in 1981, before they're all scrapped. The track work, obviously the ballast is the same colour and rails the same colour, and everything track wise is the same now as what I've got on my layout in my recent weathering job. So you can get the clear picture from that image. That's originally what I was going for, that sort of look. And then on the over page over here, again, you see the track with the weathering, and also the black bits where the grease and oil around the points are, which I've tried to do on my layout, also obviously from experience and memory as well, being a track patrolman. But more importantly, this image here, you'll notice, if you can see it on the camera at home or on your device at home, it's very weathered on the sides of the loco. It's brake dust, which would have accumulated from service and being thrown up from the track, or brake dust from the blocks of the wheels and stuff like that. And it's in a little bit of a grimy condition. Well, I'm a big fan of making something look lifelike. So yesterday, I got out my airbrush and I wreaked havoc on this. This is it's formerly a Lima model, but it was just taken over by the Hornby Railroad range years ago, and this was the second item that Hornby Railroad brand range released. The first loco they ever did was the 9F, which I weathered, and this was the second loco they brought out, which was the Class 55 Deltic, this being 55001 St Paddy, and originally it was in like a matte pristine finish. Well, I didn't really like that too much. I thought, you know what, let's really make it, although it's been out there and it's, you know, in its last few months of operation. So what I've done here is just weathered it. So we'll start from this nose end, and all I've done is I've just used some Rail Match Sleeper Grime and a little bit of Rail Match Matte Black on the bogies there. If you notice around the leaf springs there to the left of the shot, you've got the leaf springs, and then you've got the Timken bearing lubricators for the actual boxes. Obviously they're much darker with some matte black. Tone those down a little bit, and then I've basically just airbrushed everything from the ground upwards. I'm particularly pleased with the vents, the grill vents. There, they come out quite well, and that's just basically a mixed. Well, originally I painted this loco. You'll see it in some really old videos where I've done it as pristine, sort of Finsbury Park style, where everything was ex-works condition, and I painted these grills silver. They were blue originally, but I painted them silver, hand painted them, and then basically I glossed the whole model so it was like super shiny. I didn't really want that anymore, so I thought, you know what, let's give it some character, and that's exactly what I've tried to do here, and I think these have come out really well. And all I've done that really is just put a very thin layer of sleeper grime over those vents, and then just hand brush with a stiff little paintbrush some matte black, and just fan the brush over really quickly, and then with some paper towel just dab it off and blend it in, and that looks pretty cool, I think. Because in reality, this is how these machines would have looked towards their final weeks of service, or even their final month of service. If they were a loco that wasn't going to be cut up, they would be cleaned up and preserved. But obviously there was a lot of these machines, and 001 St Paddy was no exception. This one went to the scrap heap, unfortunately. But let's just move along back here, and you'll see the front end or the nose end. So as we come out onto the bonnet, if we start from the grills there, I've just given it a little bit of a dulling down with some sleeper grime on top of the bonnet there. And then you look at the front, I've given that a nice, really grimy, the shed cleaners have gone on holiday for the week look. If I swing it out a second, if I just turn it round, you can see that there's two variations I've done with my models, and I always do one side slightly less and the other side slightly more. So that side on the other side we've just seen, it's got slightly more weathering from the bogies up onto the actual body, whereas this side it's got a very light weather effect. The other side's a bit more dirty. I didn't want to do it all uniform. I wanted to do it sort of a little bit here and there, because on a real locomotive the weathering isn't all uniform everywhere. There's always darker bits, lighter bits, patches here, patches there. And if you look at this side, as you can see, I've done the top there on that end. I've even done around the windows a little bit, just giving it a light flick over. I like it. It gives it character. I like things with character. So again, on these bogies, I've just, this side they've been given some Rail Match Sleeper Grime with a little bit more rail match black on them. You can see that there. And yeah, I'm actually very pleased with these, or with this, should I say. If you go onto the roof, if you can catch that in the light, around the diesel exhaust ports, I've deliberately given that a little bit of matte black, just a little tinge around there to dull that area down. Obviously that'll be covered in soot from the exhaust. The roof grills, I've done the same treatment. And there's a little bit of the original blue that's come through on top there, which I've left. So if you don't want the whole thing to look like it's, you know, sitting in a scrapyard for 3 years, you want it looking as though there's still the character of the original loco underneath there. You can still see it, but it's just really been out on the road a long time and it hasn't had a clean. But as you can see there, it doesn't look too bad. I'm quite happy with that. I could have actually repainted these grills with a matte black or the sleeper grime over the whole lot, but I didn't want to have one particular colour. Again, I wanted the original grills to be there, but I wanted to layer it with some additional weathering. So there's sleeper grime on there, a little tiny bit of sleeper grime, and a little bit of matte black, just dry brushed into that area. And again, they all differ. It's not all uniform. Each grill panel isn't the same. There's always a different shade and variation of the weathering. And if we again spin it round, you can see on this side it varies, so it's a bit more darker there. But yeah, I am very pleased with that. Let's look at the other end. Again, there's some people out there that do weathering on locos and rolling stock for a living, and they might say, oh, that's not very good, it's a bit crap. If it is, but I like it. I think it's pretty good, and no weathering job is the same. If you look at someone's weathering pictures and you copy it exactly what someone's done on their loco, then it's not yours, it's not original. But if you do your original finish on there to how you'd like it, and I think with the key to weathering, I'll just say this really quickly, any of you out there that are thinking about having a go at doing something like this on your own locos and rolling stock, your carriages and wagons and things like that, don't be afraid. This is a budget model, by the way. This is a railroad range brand from Hornby. It's an ex-Lima model. So Lima locos, I'm getting to like them a lot actually, because they are nice little models and they are great for doing things like this on them, or for adding extra detail, fitting separate detail to them. And in terms of weathering, you're not going to break it, you're not going to ruin it. If this was like a 200-pound Bachmann Deltic, then I'd be very, very careful, and it would be very, very fine weathering I'd do. I wouldn't go quite heavy as this. That's something you don't want to muck up. But this, it's okay to weather it heavily as much as you want. And again, the tip is not to overdo it. You don't want to overcook it. This is about as heaviest as I'm going to go with this loco in terms of weathering. And obviously the idea is we don't want to completely disguise the model so it looks unrecognisable. You can see the shape of it, you instantly recognise the shape of it, it's a Deltic. But you want to see the character that's still there underneath. You want to see the running numbers, the British Railways double arrow logo under the cab window sills, the nameplate, all the little bits on there, obviously, and the yellow ends. You still want to keep the yellow ends because you still want to see, it's definitely a Deltic machine, because I recognise the yellow ends, the domino head code in the centre, and the shape of it. As you can see from that little shot there, I hope that picks it up at home for you, but that doesn't look half bad with the weathering over the bonnet like that. So, as mentioned, if you want to have a go at this at home on your own models, like you've got a Lima, not necessarily a class 55 like this one, but you might have a Lima diesel or a coach or something, you think, well, you know what, I'd like to dull mine down a bit, and do my own little bit of weathering. Don't be afraid. There are some very, very nice little packages out there on eBay in terms of complete airbrush kits, which come with an airbrush, a compressor, the airline hose that you connect the airbrush gun to the compressor with, cleaning fluid, everything, and it all comes as a kit. Very, very reasonable. That's what I started off with. Many years ago, I got myself a nice little mini compressor with a tank on there, and a nice Iwata airbrush, and that's what I use. And when I don't use the airbrush, afterwards, when it's all dry, then I really sort of spend time and love with a little dry brush and some weathering paints, and again, and just take my time enjoying it. And that's the only way you learn is practicing. It's okay to make mistakes. If you make a mistake with the weather and you do it over too much, you learn by it. Can you remove it? Technically you can, but obviously if you use thinners, you're going to burn the plastic and you'll strip the paint, but also you'll strip the finish of the actual model underneath what you're weathered. So you've got to start again. So the trick is to, I would say, practice on something small first of all, like a wagon or a coach. Let's say you've got a coach lying around in your box that you don't hardly run. Turn it into like a specialist converted coach, like a crew coach or an engineering coach or something that you want to weather, and you can practice on that. A wagon is a great idea to start off with. That's what I started off with. I started off with some, I think some tank wagons, some TTA Hornby TTA wagons. They came in a pack. There's a video on the channel way back. If you skip through the archives, you'll find it. There was a pack of 3 Hornby TTA tank wagons, and they were very loud in terms of colours. So I bought them because they were in a multi-pack, and I liked the idea of having the 3 to weather, and I gave them my personal individual identity with the weathering paints. So once you get confident in weathering stuff like wagons and coaches, then you can move on to locos. The first actual loco I ever did, funny enough, was a Hornby Railroad range brand. It was, as mentioned, the 9F. It came in a matte black X-Works edition, quite shiny. Not shiny as an Imperius, but just a plain black colour, which it needed attention. It needed character. And I think that's what makes any model, whether it's a budget model like this or something a bit more upmarket, if you give it a few little touches of your own, it makes it personal and it gives it character. If we just put that to, well, leave that there a minute, bring in this book and I'll flick through it. There's some images in this book that I was looking at. Where is it now? Most of these pictures, they're all, like if you see here on the side there, you notice up from the fuel tanks upwards on the body there, that's not my camera or the light playing a trick. That's actual the amount of weathering, as you can see there in that shot. You see how that's quite grimy there. There's a picture even, I think, in the early 60s, about 62, somewhere on the, yeah, it's on the East Coast main line. I'll find it in a minute. Hang on. Let me just grab that. Where is it? I want to show you this particular picture. It's on the East Coast main line in about 1962. There it is. Nice picture, but for a green machine, look at the amount of dirt around the bogies and around the fuel tanks, the body, the side there. So these machines weren't always pristine. They were quite grubby sometimes. But I like this machine the way it's done now, because now it's personal. Now it's got its own character. This would be something that may be in its last month or so of operation before it goes to the scrap heap or off to preservation, maybe its last few moments or weeks of service. So that's what I wanted to capture in my model. I wanted to capture it really quite grimy, like I said, the shed cleaners are on holiday and no one's giving it a good clean, so it needs to go to the wash road definitely. Anyway, with that said, that's my dirty old man, my grimy boy. Superb. Anyway, that's a little bit different today as per normal videos, and I hope you enjoy that one. And I'll see you soon in the next video. Take care, and don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. Bye bye now.